Welcome to another episode of the Chronic Comeback podcast. Today, I'm really happy and excited to have on the show Marina Diamandis. I got that right, didn't I? First
You
time?
did.
Yeah. How are you doing, Marina?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How about you?
I'm good. I'm good. So yeah, we were just speaking beforehand, and we've been speaking for like on and off, I guess, like for around like 6 to 9 months. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I think Marina reached out initially when she was still very much in the thick of things. Things have got a lot better recently. So just wanted to kind of, yeah, get her on. And also, yeah, you've got, can you just, because we haven't had anyone on before who's like I don't know, a famous person. So could you just explain for people who don't know, like what do you do? What's your profession?
Yeah, of course. So, by the way, thank you so much for having me on. I have listened to this podcast a lot and it's really helped me. So, I appreciate it. I am a singer and a songwriter. I used to go under the name Marina and the Diamonds. Now it's just Marina. And I have been doing this for 15 years.
Yeah. And we were talking about it before, like uh and let's talk a little bit about that because I think it's actually quite interesting. Otherwise we might forget to talk about it as well. You recently, after a long time, went public with what you've been going through, and
Mm.
you mentioned that there was a little bit of embarrassment about that, and that immediately resonated with me, and I think it would resonate with a lot of people. I think a lot of people keep it to themselves, and I thought it was more of like a, I guess more of a like a masculine thing that people do because they're a little bit ashamed to be seen to be weak or whatever. I think that's probably it for me. Yeah,
Yeah.
what was that for you? And like how did it feel when you finally kind of went public?
Yeah. So I did a post on Instagram basically describing what had been going on in my life for the past few, well, not just few years, but like past 7 years. And I did like one of the main challenging emotions throughout this whole process has been just feeling ashamed by the fact that my body wasn't responding the way that it used to, by me not being able to figure out what was wrong with me. And yeah, there's just been like a lot of embarrassment about it. And then when I last May, when things like reached their worst, like heights, or that their worst levels, I decided, I was like, I cannot lie about this anymore because it's actually making my symptoms way worse. Even in like, my friendship circle, my family, I don't think people really understood to what extent my life had kind of unraveled to. It was just like I wasn't really functioning anymore. And yeah, for some reason, I just felt a lot of shame about that, which is strange because if it was somebody else, I would just feel compassion. I wouldn't be like, wow, that's so embarrassing that you're ill and you've been struggling.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, it's interesting that you say about the masculinity thing because I do think men have an issue with that. But I would be curious to see if your female listeners felt the same, or if it's more something to do with my job and the fact that my image is important, and I'm putting out these kind of visuals to like build a fantasy for people. So like breaking that and saying, actually, I've been feeling like shit for 7 years is difficult.
yeah.
So yeah, but the response was amazing. People were very supportive, and I think just shocked that I haven't really like felt full wellness for a long time.
Mm, yeah, that's.
Mm.
I think let's go. We'll go back into that because I just realised that I've just jumped straight to the end of the story, so it's not a great podcast host.
It's
So
all right. We're all gonna go all over the place.
so yeah, if we could go back to like you mentioned 7 years ago, so if we could go back before then, and what was your health like growing up? How were you always a healthy person, or looking back on things now, were there telltale signs that maybe something wasn't quite right, but you just maybe assumed it was normal?
Mm. Childhood, I was very healthy. Teenagehood, the same. Um, but I think from I was always quite an emotional person, and from 18 onwards, there was kind of like a switch due to some life circumstances. And I think that kind of like, I didn't have health issues at the time, but that triggered an emotional landscape in me that would then develop into other things. So health-wise, the first time I started to be aware of the fact that something was off was in my, I would say it was probably like around 24, actually, the time when my career really kicked off and my first album came out. I started to experience really high anxiety. And I was being like whipped around the world. I was traveling absolutely loads. I was doing like a show probably every 3 days. It was something like 140 shows I did in that first year. And from then onwards, I then went on to my second album. I got my first panic attack around that time. It was after traveling. I had done 3 flights in one day. So from like somewhere in the US, a city called Charlotte, to New York, New York to London, and then I was meant to do London to Oslo to go and sing on the X Factor there. And I was about to miss my last flight, and I completely like had a meltdown. I'd never like had a panic attack before, but I was basically hyperventilating. And yeah, from then on, I started to get these little signs where I don't think my body, my nervous system were coping with what I was experiencing. So after that, I'm around like 25 or 26 at this time. I then have a break. I write my third album. I actually start meditating. I like start looking after my diet and my body differently. And I'm like on a pretty good path. I don't really have much anxiety. Then the third album comes out. It does amazingly well. It's like for the first time I have like a top 10 album on Billboard in the US. It's critically acclaimed. Like everything feels like all, you know, like all my ducks are lined up in a row. And it's just like such a satisfying point in my career. And then I go on this tour in America, and like 1 week into it, I get news that a family member is really ill. And they're going to have serious surgery. And so I can't leave this tour because of your like legal implications. You just can't leave unless someone dies basically in your family. That's the law. And so at this point, I'm also like very just tired career wise. I've just been like on the road for ages and promoting and stuff. So I plan to like postpone a UK tour to go and look after this family member. And I go and do that. They're recovering quite well. And then suddenly my grandma dies. And then a month later, my auntie dies. So it's like a 3-month period where there's just like a lot of emotional distress on top of a lot of work, a lot of flying time zones. I'm also not eating very well either, like just not eating enough, basically. So looking back now, I'm like, these conditions were perfect for something to happen. And that year was the first time I got one of my old symptoms was like buzzing, just like I felt like my body's on fire, like alarm bells are ringing. It's like my face pulses, my hands pulse. It's really like an unusual, grim feeling. So that's that year. I guess that's 2015, the end of 2015. And then 2016 comes. This, I think, is what knocks all of the dominoes over. I move into a rental house in London. It's like this big old Victorian property, looks gorgeous. I'm moving in with my partner at the time. And after we move in, like I basically start just feeling really deeply tired. Like I cannot recover for anything. I can sleep 14, 16 hours, just can't recover. The year goes on. I'm like extremely depressed, anxious. I just think that's to do with work because I suddenly think I want to quit music. I don't end up quitting. But I do announce it to the world that I am quitting.
Oh
I'm
my
like,
God.
yeah, I was like, I've done this for 10 years. I'm out. I'm like totally done. You know, my identity needs to be something else.
Oh my.
So I just think all of these things are to do with that and the fact that I'm feeling a bit lost in life.
Yeah.
So a year into, I'm still functioning, but I'm kind of like, I'm just not enjoying anything. And it feels like a real hassle to go out and like socialize and stuff. Um, and then a year into living there, I get an email from the old tenant, and it's this like lovely woman who had a kid, and she's like, I just want to say to you that I was living in that house for like 2 years, and I'm only now feeling well since moving out. And she was like, basically said there was a mold problem. She sent me pictures. And she was like, I know that landlord will not have fixed it. And he probably just painted over it when you guys moved in. At that time, I was like, oh my God. And also, she sent the email. She was like, I know you told me that you wanted to spend a lot more time at home this year. So I just wanted to warn you because I'm like worried. And I was so like, I so didn't want that news at the time. I was just like in denial. And I was just like, oh, it's nothing. I knew nothing about mold. So I was
Yeah.
like, it's fine. Um, the ceiling collapsed a few months after that. So there was a leak going on.
Oh my.
We ended up moving out of there. And then from then on, that's basically the situation that got me into this. From then onwards, I basically couldn't figure out what was going on with me. I had nausea all the time, had no appetite. And the main symptom was just this buzzing, tingling that seemed to happen when I would push myself too much. It wasn't always like, kind of like feeling severe, but it's really hard to track actually when your symptoms aren't consistent and you haven't made that link with like emotional stress yet,
Mm.
um, particularly when you still kind of travel quite a lot. So for a number of years, I just kind of adjusted to this new way of living because you forget how healthy feels.
Yeah.
If I don't know if you
Uh,
experience that.
that's a great, it's a great line. I think a lot of people do it. Sometimes I need to check myself as well. And I'm like, I'm like, because I was like, oh, I haven't actually thought. I thought the other day, I was like, I haven't actually thought about like how bad I'm feeling for like a few days, or like, it hasn't registered. Whereas previously, it would be the first thing I think about in the morning, and the last thing I think about at night. Yeah. So this was like you moved out of the moldy place. Which your partner, did he have any issues at all? Or was it just you?
So yeah, partner at the time, he had a lot of sinus issues. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's definitely something going on.
I just did because I was just wondering, because sometimes like with mold illness, it's like a perfect storm, right? You've been going through all this stuff for a number of years, which has weakened you to the point that obviously mold's not good for anyone, but if you've compromised your immune system, your nervous system, it's already in fight or flight. It's like it's just right for mold to come in and
No, totally. Like, and if your immune system's down because of stress, it's like you're much more vulnerable than the next person. Because I'm
yeah,
sure you've like read or heard a lot of stories of families where like two people are fine and they've been exposed to mold and the other two are like completely not. So
yeah,
there's a genetic component and there's also just an internal health component.
yeah. No, totally. And so you left then, and that was, what did you say, 2016, 2017,
I
or?
think that was, yeah, 2017. And then the next 2 years were just like, I was like really skinny. I think people thought I was like being really fit, but I was like, I literally could not run a mile right now.
I
I
feel
just would like not, I don't know. The weirdest thing was just the appetite, which I do still kind of struggle with a little bit. But yeah, the next few years I was just trying to get out of it. I did see a nutritionist who helped a little bit. But then the real clincher was in 2020. I moved to LA and I started to experience like the buzzing, tingling again. It had actually, in the beginning of the pandemic, it had actually gone down. Now I know why, because like, you know, the emotional stress thing for me, the pandemic was like, oh wow, like I don't have to travel or
Yeah.
like see anyone
Yeah.
for a little bit anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's when I started to think, oh my God, like this thing is like just not going away, like no matter what I do. And pushing through is just not really working anymore. So I was really honestly still like in the dark about what this was up until last May. I had like the worst month of my life. It had been getting worse and worse over 6 months. And I started to see a functional medicine practitioner because I was getting these massive flare-ups that I would not be able to like get out of for 10 days. And I was also still like trying to do stuff. So I wouldn't just rest when the flare-up happened or like do breath work. You know, none of this was even an option at the time. I just didn't know about anything. So yeah, I just at the peak of it, you know, actually, I should probably say for listeners, because they're probably thinking, how bad were you? Like, we saw pictures of you performing or whatever. It was, I would say if 10 is like you're in a dark room, you can't move out of your bed, you know, you have to like wear sunglasses, no sound or anything. I was never that bad, but I think at my worst, I was like an 8 out of 10. Like I couldn't watch TV or like hear loud music.
Which, which for you is a 10 out of 10. Do you know what I mean? It's I think a lot of this stuff is relative. You know, you can only compare to your own experience, right? So
Yeah,
I think, you know, for you that's the worst it ever got. So that is a 10 out of 10. Like
right. I see what you're saying.
yeah, because I think yeah, sometimes I almost feel a little bit guilty because it's like it's when it, you know, I can at the time when I was at my worst, I could still walk around. You know, I was still working, and it's almost like, you know, I'm running this podcast. I should be bedbound or something like that. But you know, I felt like shit all the time. You know, it affected me 24/7, and still to some extent does now. And
Mm,
and I used to almost feel like, oh, I should be bedbound because, you know, that's like the not, and that's a weird fucked up thing to think in itself. Because so I think, but then I remember speaking to someone on an episode, and I was just came to this realization. I was like, no, it's like this is my version of that. Like it's as, you know, comparing that to what healthy people feel and to what health feels like, it is literally night and day.
yes. Yeah, no, that's such a good point because I think if a healthy person would to like step into your body, they probably think that you had the flu or something. At
Yeah.
least those were my types of symptoms, that you like had like an insane hangover or like you were coming down with flu. Because but you get used to that, and
Yeah.
that's how like, you know, we can still do our jobs and like go to the occasional social thing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, on a daily level compared to my old health, it was like 5 or 6 out of 10. So it's just like never feeling great, always just feeling like you're just like under this thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think yeah, it was a massive wake up call, the last thing, because it was, I had like shooting pains and new symptoms that I'd never had before. And it had followed an emotionally stressful week. So that was the first time I ever linked emotions with this these like strange flare-ups.
Mm. And, and
Yeah.
and and throughout this whole time, had you not gone to see a doctor at any point before?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. Okay. Yeah. I was like, you just
Yeah.
sailing through this, just like not trying to see anyone. So you saw a lot of doctors.
So I went to several GPs in the UK, sorry, in London. I did a lot of blood work because I thought it was like, I don't know, vitamin deficiencies. Um, what else did I do? In May, I went to a neurologist. He was actually really helpful because he was the first person who diagnosed chronic fatigue syndrome. I did
Mm,
MRIs because they just wanted to rule out that like nothing was wrong with my no like my brain. But yeah, I had seen people here, but it's just also again that shame thing creeps in when you're like, oh, maybe the symptoms like aren't that bad.
mm.
um Also chronic fatigue syndrome sounds to me so boring. It's like it's not, it's also something that's not apparently not solvable to like Western doctors. So it just kind of deterred me from seeking help. And yeah, that's one thing that I wish I could have done differently, is just taken it seriously a lot sooner.
Yeah. Well, it's just these like labels people get given. I feel like it's almost like, I mean, this might not be correct, but I almost feel like it's potluck about which kind of doctor you end up seeing that gives you which diagnosis. I mean, I feel like
Mhm.
people have come on here and have had, Lyme, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, and I feel like they're all grouped in the same thing, and they're all essentially, and the problem that I had, and that a lot of people have, is that you then chase a diagnosis. When I found out about mold, I was like, this is it. I've figured it out. I just need to get out of my moldy place. I need to scrub all my moldy stuff. And then I just need to go and live in the desert in a tent forever.
Oh my
And then
God.
and then I'll be fine. And of course, that's actually the opposite of what's going to make me fine, because now I'm like freaking out when I'm like near mold. So it's like all of these like red herrings, like where I would like go and this new shiny object that I'd go and like chase when like I got a new potential diagnosis or a new thing that I found out. And actually, when it was like what you said there, like linking emotions to what you're going through, you're looking at more of like a systemic, holistic issue, like with yourself.
Yes, you've completely nailed it. And this is what feels so exciting to me, because it is the answer, I think, for myself anyway. I know people come at this from many different situations, but I believe it is a nervous system issue. And I think some of us are predisposed to these kinds of invisible illnesses based on, your upbringing, just your like physiology, what your DNA might predispose you to character wise. And then when you put on top of that your career environment, I think some of us are a little bit more vulnerable than others. And I think what we were saying right before you hit record of the
Yeah.
podcast, just talking about achiever type personalities,
Yeah.
or just people who really push themselves and don't really listen to their bodies. I think we see so many of these personality types with these stories and these recovery stories. Um, and that is something that is hard to change because it's part of your personality. So it's not a quick fix. It's not, I don't think it's a 6 month fix or like even a 12-month fix. I think for me it's gonna be several years. But I find that so exciting and like really satisfying because it's a self-growth thing. It's like I would not I would not take back this experience, even though that probably sounds wild. I just think I have been able to address and fix things in myself in a way that is so much more beneficial for my life now. Like there were a lot of things that were just not working.
Yeah. No, 100%. I always say when a lot of these episodes that think we're quite lucky. Anyone who gets any of these issues earlier on in their life, it is
Mm,
it is bad because you do miss out on things, but at the
mm,
same time you're setting yourself up for a healthier life later on. And because I feel like I give my mum and my dad as an example. Now they're so stuck in their ways that they'll never ever look at like changing any sort of their lifestyle. Now they get ill. They just go, their local GP, they get pills and that's it. And
mm,
I feel like I actually feel grateful. I always say now I live in Bali now because of what I've been through. I came here for
mm.
health and wellness, and I look after my sleep now in a way I never used to because of all of that. And I imagine it's the same for you. I mean, how many lifestyle changes have you made compared to who you were before?
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing that I've had to address is my relationships with people.
Mm,
Um, and that's like familial relationships, friendships, romantic relationships. I think there was like a big people pleasing part of me that would just like silence my actual needs. Um, and I think actually just so much of this experience has been about like, again, like not telling people what's actually going on, which just like suppresses things and then makes the emotions bubble up even more, make the symptoms worse. But yeah, relationships, I think being really intentional with who I choose to give time and energy to, because it's finite. I think especially when we're young in our 20s, we think it's this thing that is infinite, and it's not. And I
mm,
think it should be reserved for the people who really deserve it. And I just wasn't, I don't think I was discerning enough. I think I was a like very open person, and I still am, but I have changed because I've had to. There's too much at stake for me to remain the same.
yeah. Well, that's what I was going to ask you actually, in terms of how did people around you respond when you were going through all of this stuff? I know you said you were you not telling even your like closest friends, family. Yeah, what were you actually saying to them?
No, I don't think I ever really said to my friends until maybe at the beginning of last year. My family, they did know, and like luckily I have a sister who's a doctor, which
Oh
really
wow.
helps. Yeah, and she's kind of gone more into the like integrative like wellness side of it in the last few years, so that has been really helpful. But again, it's, I don't know, I just had this like complex that I wasn't going to be believed. And
Hmm.
maybe that's just personal to me, or maybe it comes with these kind of symptoms. I'm not sure. But yeah, I think just being able to be open about it helped. And also being able to cancel without worrying that people are going to think I'm like inconsistent or I don't care about them. Yeah, I've had to like tweak a lot of those little habits in me. And I've only like received great benefit from that with my work as well. I just feel like I'm on a really great path, and I'm so thankful,
Hmm.
because I think without these symptoms, I don't know if I would have had the like push to address them.
Hmm.
um yeah, I think the giving thing, or like feeling like I have to give to people a lot, has kind of ended in me. I'm like, I want to give, but it's got to be like in my own way now.
Hmm. God, I can't believe. Yeah, like I went a long time without saying anything to anyone. But yeah, you actually maybe even a similar amount of time. But yeah, it's it with the whole thing about not being believed. For me, that came from I think it came from doctors not really believing me. So then I was like, well, if the doctor doesn't even really believe there's something wrong with me, then what are other people gonna think?
Yeah.
Did you feel that when you went to GPs in the UK in London?
Um, a little bit. I it's not that I didn't think they believed or I didn't feel great, but it was just frustrating because like nothing came up on the blood works. And also I think feeling tired like in a city like London is so normal. It's like, oh, we all feel tired.
Good coffee.
Literally. um yeah, yeah.
It is difficult because so many people complain about being tired, and yet, and if someone looks fine, it is difficult. I mean, I've had it myself when people have like complained about being tired, and I'm like, I'm like, oh, get on with it. It's you'll be fine. But then you don't know the degree that they are tired. It could just be like a normal tired, or the the energy sucking tiredness that everyone.
Yeah, I totally. And I also feel like societally we're at this point where like people are genuinely like more tired than normal, and that's not healthy, but it's normal in this current society.
Mm,
So it's like I don't know if there are people listening who potentially, you know, hopefully don't have any symptoms, but they're just curious about this. It's so important to take care of yourself, because I think, you know, a lot of people experience burnout before all of this happens. And there's always, you know, there are steps to get to burnout. And one of them is just ignoring your fatigue.
Yeah.
It's like fatigue is not normal.
No, no, not at all. And yet people just get used to it.
Yeah.
What I wanted to ask you actually about like social media and yeah, I guess mainly social media. I have like I often think about it with like chronic health. It's been so helpful for me. Social media and internet, I guess, in general, because the first when I looked at chronic issues, like I was like, well, I'm going to be like this forever because everywhere tells me I'm going to be like this forever. Whereas then when I actually properly started looking into it, particularly on Instagram, if you follow the right accounts, I was like, huh,
Mm.
hey, people are recovering. But then Instagram itself is this like I don't know, just this never-ending void of like scrolling and just like
Perfectness.
yeah, and it just like it's not good for my I'm definitely have some form of ADHD, not diagnosed, but my attention because of something like Instagram, like YouTube, that kind of thing, but it's also been like really beneficial in other ways as well. I've also looked, you know, this is going to go out on YouTube for example. So it's I'm kind of like always battling as to the like the positives and the negatives, and you know, do they outweigh, you know, which one outweighs the other? Would you find, because you're in the public eye, has social media been worse for you than better for you, like for your health, or like yeah, what's your view on that?
Uh, Good question. If I were to like draw it up to better or worse, probably worse, because I think you know, you get those like little dopamine hits, and sometimes you do find interesting people or like things that are going to help you heal, or just inspiring things for art or music. But it also is a drain on your energy. I think social media takes from you. This we'll get into energy in quotation marks energy in a bit, but I think when you're becoming attuned to like what gives you energy and what takes away, and how much you can give, social media is something that I do tend to limit
Mhm.
myself with, because it makes, yeah, it takes from me. It makes me feel kind of buzzed out afterwards, not in a good way. If
Mm.
I'm on it for more than like, I don't know, like Instagram is probably half an hour a day, but like TikTok, you know, if I'm on my phone for 2 hours,
Well, I've
I'm not I'm
I
not going to be
downloaded
feeling full of energy.
I downloaded TikTok once and then and then deleted it straight away. I was like, oh, that is not good for me. It is not good for me at all. I mean, when they brought out Reels on Instagram, I was like, oh, this is terrible. Um, um, so when you're talking, so energy, yeah, talk to me about that. What do you mean by that?
Yeah,
Such like a wide
I
ranging
know.
meaning to different people.
It is, yeah. I think, well, step one was just being aware of how much energy I had each day, especially in the early months of recovery, knowing how much I could do. And at that time, it was like one social thing per week. I'd previously been trying to do like three things, and not really enjoying that. So I set that for myself, that little goal. And then, yeah, I think becoming attuned to what people draw from you, what people give, you know, it's just that kind of like compatibility thing in friendships, like a chemistry thing. And then that kind of spread out to all areas of my life, like with, yeah, I think with work partners, and even thinking about like when I'm on tour, how much time I can give to like meeting fans, or you know, doing promotion and stuff like that. But when it really started to kick in was I started to do psilocybin trips,
Mm.
the intention of finding out ways to heal. I had done a bunch previously in the past few years, but I've done about five in the past 6 months, and they have like been game changers.
High do like trip proper like journeys.
proper trips, yeah, like three
Yeah.
gram
Uh,
vibes.
so the that's a because I went and did a retreat in Jamaica, and by then, and then I did ayahuasca as well this year. I need to talk about that in my update as well.
Yeah.
But that was a yeah. I feel like I'm kind of like done for now. Like I definitely don't. I need to like there's a lot to process there. With your like doing that, so you're doing it kind of like once a month.
Um, I did something slightly insane, which I don't recommend to people because it's such a personal decision. But I did one last August, and then I didn't do any for a while. And I've actually done four in the last like 3 months, which is a lot for me. But I had an instinct that I needed to continue, and the instinct was right. Now I'm kind of done for a long time.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it was all around this kind of subject of the symptoms and healing. Alongside that, I should probably say before I get into more energy stuff is so I have a therapist I work with who's kind of talk therapist, but she also does body work. So she kind of like massages and moves energy as you talk about certain things and gets you to like tense up and then release at the same time. So she's important because again, she's been linking how I feel with the physical sensations for about a year and a half.
Wow. Okay.
I think that's important because with mushrooms, whatever comes up is whatever you've been working on really, or whatever's in your subconscious. So I mean, one of the most important trips was again about giving energy, and it was honestly, it was a lot about how people can really take advantage of you. And it's like, it's such a sore subject for me, but it's so important because I think a lot of people experience this. But it was something that I love to think of people in a good light. I want to think the best of people, but that's not how the world works.
Mm,
And having a trip that really focused on that people who do that know exactly what they're doing and they still want to like take advantage of you was really like heartbreaking for me. I was just like, because I don't operate like that. I was like, I just can't believe people in the world exist like that. Now I'm like, of course they do. I feel so much more pragmatic, but it was, making me a little bit less romantic, which isn't a bad thing. So that was one of the first trips. And then the few trips that I've had recently, they were basically showing me my energy system in my body. And like I said, one of the main symptoms has been this buzzing, tingling all over, which like starts in my feet. And if I don't chill out and basically shift my schedule and do all these practices to calm the nervous system, it will just get worse. So I was like, how can I stop that from happening? And how the mushrooms described it was like, you you think like something's wrong with your body. There's nothing wrong with your body. It can still move when you're feeling like that. But
yeah.
what happens is your energy, it's not that you have no energy, it's actually getting stuck. So it's almost like a pressure cooker. And what you need to do is shift the energy. So I was doing like deep breath work throughout that trip. It totally involuntary. I was like, but it was so uncomfortable physically. I was like, I have to like move this energy and get through this. Um, and yeah, a lot of the trip was just about movement and how it's not a bad thing. I shouldn't be scared of it when these things happen. Because usually, if I have a dip, I will just like go to bed and I feel like scared to move almost. I'm like, oh my God, I need to do nothing until the symptoms go away. But since that trip 2 months ago, I have not had any dips.
Wow.
Actually haven't had a proper flare up since like 8 months ago. Dips are okay because they're part of recovery. And I know what to do to get over them. They usually just last a day. But
Yeah.
this trip was so important because it just shifted my perspective on movement being a bad thing when I'm in this like fatigue zone.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's yeah, thank you for sharing all that. That's that like reframes a lot of the stuff that I think about as well. Or at least I guess, what's the word? I'm trying to think of the word. It basically, I can't think of the word. It's in agreement with with what I think, basically. I with what I've been through, movement has been key because uh, I, I used to be like petrified going into like trying to do exercise again. And I would kind of like typically just me being me, I wouldn't like take it slowly. I would go in and just try to, hammer a workout, and then I'd just be screwed. And then I'd be so scared. I'd be like, okay, well, each time you do something like that, it's reinforcing that thing in the back of your head that's saying, movement is bad. You're broken. You're weak.
Yeah.
All of that kind of thing. And so I actually, working with a couple of trainers out here, they were like, no, you're not going to, I think it was just, you're never going to make yourself worse unless you've got like a broken leg, or you've got something, a specific like injury or something like that. You're not going to actually make yourself worse. Yeah, you might make your symptoms worse, but you're not going to make yourself worse.
Yes, that's such an important distinction.
Yeah, yeah. And I think when I started doing that, because I after like 6 weeks of working with this guy, I'd kept on having like flare-ups, and like each time I'd be like, oh, I don't think we should work together today, because I was working with him in person. And he was like, no,
Mm.
no, you need to come in. We'll just take a step back, or we'll take a step sideways, and we'll just do something else. We won't have a day off. And I never did have like a day off in the program. We just did something a little bit different, and I was still moving every day. And it just taught myself to trust it more. And actually, my biggest progression was made when we didn't work in person, because I went back to the UK and I wasn't working with him, and I was petrified because I was on my own now. But actually, I realized, oh no, I can trust myself now. And then that was when I started to make like more
Mm.
progression. So yeah, does that resonate with what you're talking about?
Yes, yeah, I love what you say about trust in the body, because I think a huge part of healing uh, for me has been restoring this sense of safety,
Mm,
and sense of trust as well. And it takes time. It's like, repetitive action is needed. But I think with what you were just saying, I'm sure you now having consistent workout regime, almost like it in your head, it's not like this dangerous thing anymore. It's like, this is something that's really good for my body, and I'm not going to damage myself. Because I think what you said about the fact there's nothing wrong with your body, even if this, oh sorry, that nothing bad's going to happen to your body even if the symptoms get worse.
yeah,
That is like just major, because your head when you're lying in bed is telling you something completely different.
of
But
course.
it's like, um thinking about the brain retraining, which you've done several podcasts on now. But I think, yeah, one of the things with that is just like understanding that this is a feedback loop that's happening, not for every person with these symptoms, but I do think it's quite a big component of it. Um, and again, it just that makes me feel safe as well. That like calms me. I did actually do the Gupta program
Yeah.
last summer. I didn't complete it, but I learned the technique. I think I got halfway through, and then it's that classic thing of, I start to feel better. I don't need it anymore. But I still occasionally use it, and yeah, I would recommend that to people as well if they haven't tried it.
Yeah, no, I think they're all great if you can make them work for yourself. I still struggle with that, because a lot of it's around visualization and stuff, which I'm not great at. So I've just tried to find my ways of moving through a lot of this stuff. And something else
Mm.
that, have you heard of Primal Trust, the program Primal Trust?
I don't think I have actually.
Okay, and it's a Dr. Kat King. She's on the show. On the show, I make it sound like a live
Come on, it is a show.
live studio audience.
They'll never
On
know.
the podcast, on the podcast. I mean, I should. It's because I'm trying to impress. You're famous, so I was trying to impress you. So she was on the show, and one of the things that she talks about in her program is trying to find joy in every part of it once a day, at least once a day, trying to find joy in your life. I've people who listen to this regularly are going to say, I've heard you say this so many times, but it resonated with me so much because I just suddenly thought, I was like, huh, I literally haven't had, other than maybe bits of joy that might come up through, random conversations, like something that might make me laugh on TV or work, that, something good happens, actual like
Mm.
joy, like regularly. I was like, I haven't had that in like a few years. And I really looked at it. I was like, what does give me the most joy? And it is movement. And I was like, I need to find a way to incorporate it in my life. And one of the other things
Mm.
she said in Primal Trust is building this identity that you are someone who exercises. You are an yeah, you're someone who does, like, not fitness but exercise. It's just, even if you do this every day,
Mhm.
like, even if you do that, as a start, you're exercising, you're doing something. And I just thought those two things were like a really cool switch, that went off in my head, and it was like, okay, if I do that regularly, this is this is me exercising. I don't know if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I mean, both those things are so helpful. I mean, number one, the incorporating joy back in, I think is so important because people with chronic symptoms, we like live in our heads quite a lot. And I think for me that was one of the first things that I started to incorporate back in. Like my first, sorry, my first joyful thing was going to a roller disco with my friends. Sorry.
That is so
And it
that is
was
so
like,
that's so LA. That
it
is so
is so LA, it's like
LA.
70s LA. But like we all felt so lit up inside in a way that I hadn't since, oh God, forever. I was like, oh my God, I feel like a little kid again. And from that night onwards, I was just like, I think that was 1 month into recovery. I just felt like, okay, I'm gonna like start to rebuild my life in a way that I never have before. Because I think, especially with my career, it is so joyful, and like, my hobby, my passion became my job. And I get so much satisfaction from it, but you still have to have like a personal life where you do things that are just for you, that they aren't, filmed or recorded or put on Instagram. It's just like at the moment, I love looking for vintage teacups.
Nice,
Two arrived today.
nice,
I
nice.
don't know.
I
You want to
wasn't
see one?
expecting you to say vintage
I'll
teacup.
show you. That for me is like, it's a fun little Saturday afternoon activity. Like, and it's for no reason other than I just like it.
Yeah,
Again, it's like that cutting that productivity thing in half. It's like we need to get rid of that. Like we're
yeah.
human beings. We need to like be living, actually living and existing in ways that don't involve work.
No, totally. I think it's like here in Bali, there's where I live in Canggu, it's kind of like a really good mix of people doing that, but then also like trying to run businesses and being like ambitious, and it's like that, a good mix of it. Whereas like Ubud, have you been to Bali before?
I have, yeah, yeah,
Oh,
just
okay.
once.
Yeah. Did you go
Yeah,
to Ubud?
yeah, Ubud and Canggu as well.
Okay, yeah. So Ubud's like yeah, if I'm there too long, I feel like it's everyone's just like in this floaty, like creative. So and that's nice for a while, but I feel like I always just it's good for me to tap into that, particularly because I didn't really have that in my life. But if I look at those people and I'm like, that I would always need some kind of like drive and ambition and masculinity as well. So it's about getting that, like, for me anyway, that like mix of the two.
Yeah.
Because if you suddenly just became a professional tea collector, teacup collector, and then just quit singing, you just announced on your Instagram, yeah, that's what I'm doing now because I'm following my passion. I think after a while you'd probably be like, oh no, I also need that other side of it as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's about balance, isn't it? Um, I think, yeah, fun is really important though.
Yeah.
And I guess what I was saying is then it's that when you have uh workaholic tendencies or like achiever tendencies, sometimes you can forget how important fun stuff is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
100%.
yeah.
100%. Like, like, I always like, one of my biggest values is like fun play. And I think that's why I used to like going out so much, and getting drunk, because it felt like, that was like fun and play. But then, now I'm like finding different versions of that, which means I don't need to go and do that.
Yeah.
It's life's serious enough without like making it more serious.
Yeah.
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 If someone's going to be listening to this right now, they're going to be in their darkest hour, listening to these podcasts. They normally are, probably, because they're pretty desperate. What would you say to someone right now, given what you've been through and where you are now? What would be your advice for them to keep like going and just keep moving forward?
Um, hmm. I think for me, what really helped get a bigger picture of everything was like getting a massive sheet of paper and actually writing down, like mapping when your symptoms began, but also looking at your life before that, and just jotting down, like, events in childhood, teenagehood, things that might help you paint a picture of what your personality is like. Because some of us, we don't have as much awareness as we might think. That's been the most helpful thing for me, is to link things back to nervous system health and what might have contributed me getting into this position in the beginning. Because all of the events that like led up to the actual like burnout, or however you want to call it, uh some of them aren't really that important. They're part of the story, but like there was never like just one thing. And I
Mm.
think that's important to think about, because with healing, it's going to be like a multi-pronged uh, situation. It's not just like finding a supplement that's going to make you better, which is what I used to look for on
Yeah.
Reddit in the old. Oh God,
Yeah.
don't go on Reddit forums. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
It's gonna probably be a bit of everything. Like, this is the amazing thing and the amazing opportunity that this gives you, is it's gonna force you to look at every single part of your life, and that is nutrition, sleep, movement, relationships, your choice of work, what's actually important to you in life. I think, if you're in your darkest depths right now, try and see this as like an opportunity to actually change your life, because it's so difficult. But people who have these symptoms, they're in you for a reason. Something in your life or your system was not working. And I mean, this is a slightly controversial take, because there are going to be people who are much more scientific and they may have a different perspective, but this is just my opinion.
Yeah.
It's For me, it's always about, something in the way that you've operated and lived your life has not been working for you. And I think these symptoms they're just signs from the body. They're not they don't have to be this serious, scary thing. It's just your body saying, I've had enough and I'm not going to continue until you actually sit down and address this.
Yeah. No, totally. Amazing advice, and I couldn't agree more. I think the what happens is people just don't. I feel like the body gives you like it gives you this little nudge and going, nah, here's a symptom, something's not right. Pay attention, and then you don't pay attention, and then gives you a bit more of a nudge, and then until the point where that it's like slapping you around the face.
Yeah.
And that's when it's worse, and that's probably when most people, including us too, like, then that's when we actually act. But
Yes.
it would be amazing if there was, and hopefully I think at one point in the future there will be. I mean, the amount of time, the amount of like extra information there is now compared to like 5 years ago, for example, it's crazy. So I hope in like 10 years time, people can have access to this kind of information as soon as they start. Like, for example, if you went to the GP, that GP goes, okay, I think this might be something to do with your nervous system. Have you ever tried
Mm.
gupta? And
Oh
how
my God.
amazing would that have been?
Yes. Oh my God. If someone had just said the words nervous system to me,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
major, that would have been because I love psychology. So if someone had said that 5 years ago, I'd be like, okay, this is like opening a new window for me. But honestly, it wasn't until I discovered your podcast and I've been doing my own reading about it that I started to really understand what this problem was. And that was only through hearing about other people's recovery stories.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, that's another thing as well. If people just immediately got exposed to, I always say I like we should do a deal with Google that, or when people type in, chronic fatigue, the first thing that comes up is a recovery story rather than
Yeah,
an article of how people are going to be sick they're a ton of.
totally. Yeah, I think that is so, God, oh, it makes me makes me feel so mad because I'm just like in the UK, it's called ME, or that's how it's most recognized. And as soon as you say ME, people are like, oh my God, like that's some serious thing. You're never going to recover from that. And I'm like,
Yeah,
it's literally just a label. It's not, it's a condition. It's like a syndrome rather. It's like a host of symptoms. It's not like a disease.
yeah,
But when you like Google that, the most shocking stuff comes up. And I'm not surprised that people just surrender and they're like, okay, this is my life now. And, they attach their identity to that
yeah.
because there's not really a lot else out there. But thankfully, thankfully things are changing. Yeah. Functional medicine practitioners really helped me as well because they take a completely different look at things than a Western doctor will.
Definitely, definitely. Well, look, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story, being vulnerable, and thank you for actually coming out and sharing it with so many people, previous to this. I think it's one of those things where you probably didn't realize at the time, but it's helped you as much as much as anyone else. Because I feel that as well, me talking about it. So thank you for coming on. I normally
Well,
say, I normally say uh if anyone wanted to reach out to you to ask you any questions, but you might be in your DMs for days. So I guess yeah, I guess I guess I don't know what
no,
to say.
people can DM me.
Yeah,
You can. I might not be able to answer it, but please feel free. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you so much. People are gonna get so much from this. So yeah, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Phil, for having me on.